Well, June marks the beginning of Pride Month in the province, and there have been a lot of conversations about the role of Pride Month activities and who they are for. Pride organizations across the province have banned Sask Party MLAs from Pride events. Organizers say it's in protest to the Sask Party's pronoun policy legislation and is a move to make sure the queer community feels safe at events. Blake Tate is with Out Saskatoon. He says it's not just tension with the provincial government that has the queer community feeling motivated to stand up for their rights.
I think this year that standing together is much, much more important, and I think we're going to see a lot more people standing with more protest signs rather than more celebration signs this year.
So today we have a panel of people from across the province weighing in on the politics around Pride. We want to know, do you participate in Pride events? If so, why is that important to you? You can call 1-800-716-2221. You can also email bluesky@cbc.ca. Well, our guests today are joining us from all over the province, and they each bring a unique perspective to the conversation. Kelly Waters is the Secretary of Battleford Area Pride. The Battleford Area Pride includes several communities, including Regina, Moose Jaw, Meadow Lake, that have banned MLAs from the Saskatchewan Party and the Sask United Party from their events. So Kelly joins us on the line right now from North Battleford. Kelly, welcome.
Hello.
Thanks for being here. We also have... Yeah, it's great to have you. We've got Kissy Dury as well, a trans TikToker and content creator from Saskatchewan who's currently calling Calgary home. She was just named to TikTok's 2024 LGBTQIA+ Pride Visionary Voices list. Kissy uses her platform to explore transgender issues, particularly those facing people of color. And she says she's had to develop thick skin in the process. She's flying home to participate in Saskatoon Pride, but first she joins us here on Blue Sky. Kissy, hello.
Hi, Alicia.
Thanks for being here. Really
I'm glad
appreciate
to be
it.
here. Yeah.
And then with me here in our Saskatoon studio is Jean Dudley. Jean's a member of Queer Seniors of Saskatchewan and is involved in planning the Spark Your Pride event at the Western Development Museum. Jean, welcome to Blue Sky.
Thank you very much. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, what a panel. I'm so eager to hear what each of you have to say about Pride events this year. I do want to start today's show by getting your reactions to the move by many Pride organizations to ban Sask Party MLAs from taking part in Pride. This all started with Regina Pride. They announced they will not hold a flag-raising ceremony with MLAs outside the legislature for Pride Month. Organizers released a statement that said, quote, "We will not allow them to masquerade as allies and supporters and then put our community in danger for the other 11 months of the year." And just to clarify for listeners, they're referring to the Saskatchewan Party introducing the so-called parental rights legislation and invoking the notwithstanding clause, a rare measure that allows provincial governments to override certain charter rights for up to 5 years. So to start with, I just want to share Minister Jeremy Cockrell's response.
I see a bill and I see a policy that's meant to include, not meant to exclude. And so, I understand. I mean, I spent many days here at the legislature in front of many of you folks, as well as in the House, participating in the hours of debate that we had on that particular bill. I understand. For many, it was a challenging topic. At the end of the day, though, I feel quite comfortable with the fact that we've made it. We've legislated the ability for parents to be involved in important conversations and decisions in a child's life. So, I'm comfortable with where we landed on that.
So I want to start with Kelly because I know this hits really close to home for you. Jeremy Cockrell is your MLA. You are a teacher. So what kind of discussion? Yeah. So what kind of discussion took place among your group when you decided to ban Sask Party MLAs from North Battleford Pride events?
Well, we always extend invitations to political figures, whether they are an MLA or a candidate. And in the 9 years that we've existed as a Pride group, it's always been a Sask Party MLA, and they've never participated. The NDP always steps forward, even before we've given an invitation. And the problem with Bill 137 is that for me as a person, as a teacher, it greenlights discrimination against trans youth. And when it came out with when they made the information became public that there was only 18 letters, like a whole whopping 18 letters that were supposedly the basis for this decision. That's just not, that's underwhelming. And they didn't consult stakeholders. I remember when I heard it on the radio, I was completely shocked on the news, and I stopped what I was doing and went and looked it up. I was like, this can't be true. So for us locally, it just creates an unsafe space to even consider having somebody there who condones discrimination against trans youth. It's not acceptable. It's not appropriate. So that's our stand on it. And when Queen City Pride took the stand we were talking about it. And then when Prince Albert decided to stand in solidarity, we agreed that we wanted to do the same.
Was that a fairly easy decision on North Battleford's part, or did it involve a bit of back and forth?
For us, is very easy, especially with Minister Cockrell being the education minister. That was a very easy decision.
Because it's true that not all Pride groups have followed suit. So Prince Albert Pride said Sask Party MLAs can only take part if they publicly denounce Bill 137. Saskatoon Pride is taking... Yeah, and then Saskatoon Pride has taken a slightly different approach. Out Saskatoon, Blake Tate from Out Saskatoon had this to say on one of our morning shows. So this is Blake Tate on Saskatoon Morning.
When it came to discussing what happens if the Sask Party puts in an application this year, we wanted to make sure that we were not taking a step specifically towards the Sask Party and banning their walking. We wanted to make sure that every single one of our applicants in the parade is legitimately allies to the community. And so we've come up with our Parade Values Committee. We have a blind review panel of community members from different intersections within the community to really make sure that every application that comes through is in line with our values, with our mission statement. And with that, we don't necessarily see that the Sask Party would be able to get through that. We also don't expect them to apply this year.
Have Sask Party MLAs taken part in the past?
They have. They actually walked last year and then immediately put forward Bill C-137. And so that's why we're having this discussion. Past the Parade Values Committee, if they were to apply and were to miraculously make it through that process, it would become a bigger board discussion. But based on their past actions, I don't see Saskatoon Pride allowing the Sask Party to walk in our parade unless they were to suddenly change their policies, right?
If an MLA were to attend the parade, as you said, miraculously, if someone miraculously made it through that process, how do you think that they would be received?
Last year's parade, when they walked, they were booed by onlookers, and I would expect the same reaction from community members.
So that's Blake Tate from Out Saskatoon speaking to CBC's Candice Lipsky on Saskatoon Morning. Now, I'm curious to hear from each of you about that. They have a very specific application process to make sure that every group that wants to take part is in line with their values, which leads to sort of a big question. And Jean, perhaps I'll start with you on this. How do you determine if someone is a good ally or not?
Well, that's a pretty complicated question, actually, because it's hard to know. Someone who is a good ally, whether it's to queers or any other group of people, has to act like a good friend. And a good friend supports you. A good friend doesn't let other people in public smear the group that you belong to. They don't just sit there and be quiet. They get up and they say something like, that's inappropriate discussion at this table. And also, I don't know in terms of like the Pride Parade of all the people who travel in the Pride Parade. I don't know what they do in their daily lives that supports us. And so, again, they would have to be really dedicated to paying attention. It's just like when the word black became unpopular. And if you were supportive of that community, then you wanted to not use the word black anymore, right? And it's the same with us. Like, you'd have to be willing. We did a presentation the other day to an EFAP group, or family support group, and one of the women said, I don't care what my child turns out to be, if they're lesbian or trans or bi or heterosexual. I just want them to be happy. And I thought, so that's an ally. And she's not speaking for her kid. She's just saying, this is what I want for them. And so that's what we need from allies, is people to say, if they're in a work situation and there's people at work who make comments like I used to be prone to or hear, we wouldn't want any homosexuals in our classrooms, because of the old addition of assuming that homosexuality was a deviant behavior, and deviant psychology was something that was bad. Therefore, every homosexual is a pedophile, and you wouldn't want a pedophile in your classroom. And those kinds of things are totally unacceptable. They were unacceptable then, and they're still unacceptable today. So things are changing. I'm sorry, I'm not sure I answered your question.
Yeah, no, you did. I mean, it's a big question that we're going to unpack for the next several minutes, because one thing I do want to ask you, but I'm just going to say it out loud, and then we'll come back to it. But it's not just individuals who are participating in Pride events, but we have corporations now. So that's a whole other topic. We're going to get to that.
Okay.
But first, Kissy, I'm wondering if I can put that question to you. How do you determine if someone is a good ally or not?
I think a good ally is somebody that has to show up, not just at a specific time, like during rainbows and celebrations and all of that, but they have to be there, all the time. And also, I think an ally has to create space for the people, the marginalized community, especially like when we're talking about Pride Month with the LGBTQ plus community. I think as an ally, you just have to. And you don't have to do so much. It does not mean you have to go above and beyond, but just showing that you care. When you see that, you see that somebody is going through a difficult time, or somebody's being harassed, you have to stand up. And I think, and it takes a lot, for example, if maybe watching somebody facing maybe homophobia or transphobia, queerphobia, and then you're in a group of people who do not support that, it takes a lot for that person to actually have the courage to stand up and say, hey, what you're doing is wrong. And I think in those situations, that's what defines a true allyship. And it's complicated.
It is complicated. We're going to get into some of how it can be complicated, because everything you're saying, I think, would resonate with a lot of folks, and they would say, yeah, I would stand up for someone, absolutely. But then it gets a little bit trickier, and one person might think you're an ally and another person may not. So we'll get into that, where it does get a bit trickier. Kelly, though, I just want to put that question to you. How do you determine if someone is a good ally or not?
Oh, I think basically having the back of whatever group it is that you're the ally of, having the courage to say, hey, what you're saying or doing isn't okay with this person, showing support and understanding for other people. Being a safe space. Trying to think what else. People have covered it pretty well. In the case of the LGBTQ plus community, if somebody has preferred pronouns and names, using them, affirming who they are. That's about all I have to say about it. Everybody else kind of covered things.
So let's talk about when it gets a little bit messier, because the LGBTQ2S plus community is incredibly diverse. I mean, our panel, we only have 3 people, and each of you come with a different background and a different perspective. So what happens if some members of the community consider someone an ally and other members of the community don't? Jean?
Haven't experienced that exactly. So I don't think I can comment at this time on that.
Okay, maybe my question isn't the right question then.
Maybe not. Maybe it's all your fault. No.
But, you know, I maybe I'm making an assumption that it's a bit more gray. But Kissy, before we further unpack this, if I put that question to you, what if one person thinks someone is an ally and another person doesn't? What happens then?
I think, having a discussion, like with that, having a discussion, I think, coming to a consensus, like, finding out, like, why do you think that they're not an ally? And why do you think they are an ally? And, because sometimes there's a difference in the difference of opinion, really. But yeah, I think, having an open conversation.
An open conversation. Kelly, what do you think? What if one person thinks someone is an ally and another person doesn't?
We haven't had too much of that, but I think it comes down to if people are willing to confront their own personal biases. We had a woman the other day just randomly come up when we were having an event and tell us a story about how she viewed herself as being an ally. And then the very first time she was in a public washroom and a trans woman came in, she found herself having thoughts she didn't expect. So she had to be open about that and have discussions with other people about it and share that experience and basically grow and learn together and have discussions. And our group here, we try to be as inclusive as possible, but sometimes something will come up that warrants a discussion, but it's like Jean, it's not really a common thing that happens.
Maybe if we move it beyond individuals and talk more about organizations and businesses, because there have been conversations over the years as to whether or not police belong at Pride events, and there are people with different perspectives on that. So, Jean, maybe that's an example we could unpack a bit.
Oh, boy, I don't want to get myself in public trouble. I think organizations are a lot harder. But one of the things that Kissy said about allies is creating space. And that really made sense to me, because just because you're an ally doesn't mean you can get up and talk at rallies about homosexuals or trans people. Part of the whole thing about any group who's kind of an underdog is that people who aren't in that group of underdogs need to work to help so that those people can become just the same as the rest of society. So I think that's what Kissy might have meant by creating space. Mm-hmm. And I think that's really true, because there has been situations where someone says, no, I'm an ally, I can answer that question. Mm-hmm. Well, no, you can't. It's just like the seniors group I belong to. We don't believe that young people can speak for us. Because they have not lived through, being jailed or being threatened with jail because you were queer. And so their reality is very different than ours. It doesn't mean that their reality isn't true. And I would say that goes with allies too. Someone might be a really good ally to a trans person, but hate gay men, because gay men might be threatening to them, but trans people aren't threatening to them. I mean, so it's just, I think of it as I think about friends. Like, I'm friends with some people who are friends with other of my friends, but who are definitely not friends of some of my other friends. Mm-hmm. So I think allies are going to be like that too. There's going to be some things that they're really comfortable doing and some things they're not comfortable doing, which did not answer your question about corporates.
Well, I'm leaving the corporate stuff for the next half. But,
okay.
So when someone's making a decision about whether or not to go to Pride,
right,
who should be there?
Well, these days, I think anybody who wants to be there can be there. Like, again, Pride started out as a demonstration in 1975. There was no happiness in Pride. It was all like, please give us our rights. Please quit putting us in jail. Please stop conversion therapy. Please stop all this stuff that people were doing. And, with the Human Rights Code and Doug Wilson and all those kinds of, in our history, we were saying, like, we're alive and we're not going to take it anymore. So today, Pride seems it's not like the same thing at all.
But perhaps there are people who are speaking out and saying, well, this is why we don't want Sask Party MLAs there, that trans people feel threatened, that
that's true.
Their rights to health care are being taken away. And so,
well, and I support them. I mean, I have a personal experience with the Sask Party, in that all of the queer seniors of Saskatchewan's directors were nominated for the Queen's Medal last year. Do you remember the Queen's Medal?
Yeah.
Anyway, so all of our names went through, but you had to go through with an MLA or some other organization. And so all of us who were directors who happened to live in NDP areas got Queen's Medals. Those of us whose names were put forward who were not in an NDP area did not receive a Queen's Medal.
What does that say to you?
For their volunteerism. Well, that there's some anti-homosexuality. Oh, I hate that word. There's anti-gay is not much better. Anti-2S-LGBTQIA plus mentalities within that party.
Okay, let's pause for a second. Kissy and Kelly, I'm going to go to you in just a moment so you can gather your thoughts, but I want to just take a second here to check in with the CBC's David Shield, who joins us right now. David, what's making news?
Saskatchewan's new chief coroner will begin his job next month. Jeff Wagner is a former superintendent of the Community Services Division of the Regina Police Service. In a news release, a justice minister says Wagner has a proven track record of building strong relationships with the community. The Regina Fire Department is investigating a house fire near the General Hospital. Crews were called out to the 2000 block of Wallace Street around 7:30 last night. That's where they say they found heavy smoke billowing out of a bungalow. And Etta Love won gold at this year's World Youth Weightlifting Championships in Peru. The Saskatoon athlete lifted about 300 pounds over her head, breaking a 2-decade-old record. She started when she was just 11 years old. And I'll have a full newscast for you coming up at 1 o'clock.
David, thank you.
You're welcome.
That is the CBC's David Shield. I'm Leisha Grabinski. You are listening to Blue Sky on CBC Radio 1. You can also stream us on the CBC News app. We've got it there. It's free, so you can listen to us on the CBC News app. We have 3 guests with us today. We've got Kissy Dury, who's a trans TikToker and content creator from Saskatchewan, currently calling Calgary home. We also have Jean Dudley, member of Queer Seniors of Saskatchewan, with me here in our Saskatoon studio. And Kelly Waters is also with us, secretary of Battleford Area Pride. We're unpacking a lot of really tricky things here today on the show. Kissy, I started by asking Jean about an organization that has been seen as somewhat more controversial, obviously, at Pride events, police. And perhaps you have thoughts on whether or not police belong at Pride parades, and that might lead us in a direction of getting at when it's a bit trickier to decide who belongs and who doesn't. So what do you have a take on whether or not police belong at Pride? Kissy?
Well, personally, I think there's a difference of opinion here, but for me, definitely, I feel like considering the history of Pride, which started as a riot, and there has always been a complicated relationship between the police and the queer community. And I personally, I don't feel very comfortable, having the police around, at the Pride events. But again, as Jeannie said, everybody is welcome to celebrate. But I think at the same time, I feel that, we should also be cognizant of the kind of the other effects, the influence, and also the kind of the history that we've had, between the queer community and the police force. So, so I'm somewhat ambiguous. I don't know. I don't really know. So
yeah, and I think that's a fair answer to have, right? Sometimes we just, I respect that. I also want to ask you about Pride this year in particular, because we heard from the person from out Saskatoon who said we'll likely see more protest signs than celebration signs. That's their take on Pride this year, but referring to some of the legislation that we've seen that many say is hurtful to trans people. And so I'm wondering, you are going to be traveling to Saskatoon for Pride. How are you assessing things this year as you plan your trip here?
Definitely it's going to be, I'm guessing there's going to be a lot of posters and protests for sure, but I'm definitely going to be there to celebrate. I think, as Jeannie said, Pride has come so far and so much has changed compared, now we celebrate, and obviously we also acknowledge the pain and the struggle that those who came before us had to pave the way. But yeah, for me, I think I'll be celebrating, and also I'll also keep an eye out um, for any folks who might need any sort of like um, space, to be able to feel themselves, express themselves, and be who they are. Yeah.
I find that you strike that balance in your TikTok and on social media, Kissy, because you're raising awareness of what it's like to be a trans person, and you're also spreading trans joy and having a lot of fun on TikTok.
Mhm.
But sometimes that's a space where a lot of hate can be present too. So how do you navigate that? How do you keep that celebratory spirit, that joy that comes from your social media posts, and even right now in this conversation, I hear how yeah, that you are coming for a celebration.
I think it's just kind of like for me, I've just come to accept the fact that I cannot really like I don't have to react to everything that people say or do to me. Like I have to have control of my own emotions. And yeah, I mean, it's tough sometimes because, like, yes, I'm a human being. And sometimes, like, negativity does get to people. It does get to me too sometimes. But I just try to hold that positive outlook into life. And I think that if people they don't like what I do, or that they don't like me, essentially, it's like that's their problem. Really, it's not my problem. I'm here to live and exist and just yeah, like everybody else, basically.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't imagine it's easy. And I want to ask you, because there's been a growing anti-trans movement in the U.S. We've seen some of that here too, right? Not just in Saskatchewan, New Brunswick, and Alberta. Both have implemented strict pronoun policies. We've had trouble getting trans guests on the program in the past because they just haven't felt safe. And you're out there on social media, which I think can be a really difficult place sometimes. So why is it so important for you to be out there, to exist in that space?
Because I think representation matters, and being able to see somebody who looks like you, somebody who shares the same background as you, and it does save lives, really. It really does. For so many people, like in the queer community, they look back. It's most of us, like, always have stories, like, when you see somebody who's like me, who they inspire you then to be comfortable in your own skin. So yeah, that's why I think, like, it's important for me to just be there. Not just me, but I think there needs to be more like me and more diverse. Like not like me, like more diversity. We need to
That's
see
a
like more
very
younger people, older people. Yeah, in between. Yes. Mhm.
It's a very powerful thing to say, that, and I don't doubt you that what you're doing saves lives. How do you know that what you're doing saves lives? Do people reach out to you? Like, how do you know that?
Yeah, sometimes, I do get like, DMs, like, like some of the fans will be like, oh my God, yeah, you inspire me so much. Because of you, then I've come to love myself. Or maybe I've, tried to come to terms with my past, maybe trying to reconcile with my family or whatever. Some of them, they even say, like, I've just decided to cut ties with my families because they just won't love and accept who I am. And yeah. And so I think that is very, like, it's very touching, really, because, it's the information that's very personal, and I think it also shows, like, how some people, perhaps, for some people, especially in the queer community, most do not have that safety, like safety, like, I mean, in terms of, like, having like a safe community, people to confide into, just to express themselves and be who they are. And that's sometimes they seek that sort of comfort from, like, outside of that. And this could be through social media, it could be through other forms, other platforms on the internet.
That feeling of safety I've heard that several times now, and I mean that was part of the reason that some organizations decided to not invite Sask Party MLAs. They said they wanted Pride events to feel safe for people. And so, Kelly, I'd like to bring you back into the conversation. The initial question that I posed was a more controversial group and whether or not they belong in Pride. And so police, an example of some people think they should be there, some people don't think they should be there. So I'm wondering your perspective on that, and how that might lead to other questions around who else is at Pride and who should be there and who shouldn't be there. So, Kelly, your thoughts?
Well, I understand it's a complicated issue in different communities for different reasons. In the Battlefords, the RCMP have been nothing but fantastic for us. There was until a couple years ago, a very visible, active trans male RCMP member. So that was fabulous. And anytime we've had any issues, let's say a neighbor makes a big stink when we're doing the crosswalk painting and calls the RCMP. The RCMP is completely in our corner. We've only had positive experiences here in the Battlefords with the RCMP having our back. If we've contacted the RCMP because we were getting harassment on our social media pages, just completely on our side. So that's just us, though. I understand that's not the case everywhere. We've only had positive experiences with the local police.
Thanks for saying that, Kelly. Jean, I want to know more from your perspective, just how much you've seen Pride change over the years. But I also want to point out that I think I made an error in some of my talking here, referring to Blake Tate as someone who's without Saskatoon. Blake Tate is a member of the Saskatoon Pride Board of Directors. I just wanted to correct the record on that. That is my fault. So Blake Tate, member of the Saskatoon Pride Board of Directors. But Jean, you've been part of events for a long time.
Yeah.
So how much have Pride parades? You've seen them change dramatically. So yeah, what do you make of the changes you're seeing?
I mean, the world is changing, and it was in. Like the Human Rights Code changed in 1993, and that started to include sexual orientation in Saskatchewan. So, I was 40 before that happened, right? So up until that time, any of us could have been kicked out of our apartments, fired from our jobs, no leg to stand on. And so those kinds of changes have also changed the Pride Parade. Right? Mm-hmm. So things are so much more liberal now than they were. Not that they're great, which is, obvious, especially in our province with all the stuff going on with the Sask Party and what they're calling parental rights, which I have trouble referring to. I don't think it's a clarification of their stand, but so I mean it's changed a lot, and I think it's a good thing. Like kids today in school talk about wearing dresses or whether they feel like being a boy today or a girl today, and that's a kind of freedom that we never had. Right? And if that helps people find out who they are and how they want to be, that's great. Yeah, so I think you asked me about the parade and how much it's changed.
How much has changed?
It's huge. I mean, and there's all these corporations having floats and paying for them, and it doesn't hurt us that they do that.
Okay, well, that's what I want to ask you more about that, because that is another thing that some people, worry about rainbow washing. Other people have said to me on radio shows that it meant a lot that their major employer had rainbow signs outside, right? So, tell me more about that.
Well, seeing those rainbow signs, especially for us older folks, I can't speak for younger folks, but, I notice if it's on a store window. I notice it immediately. And one of the things we've done with Queer Seniors, again, is gotten pins to give out to people that when we're doing presentations to say, if you have this pin on, somebody may talk to you. If you don't have that pin on, the person doesn't know whether they can talk to you or not. So it's just a sign of being an ally and letting people know that, I know what the rainbow stands for, right? Yeah. Which some people don't. So, it doesn't mean, and I was at a medical clinic, I shouldn't use names, that had the sign on, but, and when we talked to them, I said, that doesn't mean that everyone in here is supportive of 2S LGBTQI+, right? Mm-hmm. It doesn't mean that. It doesn't mean that to me as an individual, just because that sign's on the door, that I can talk to any doctor the same way I would about someone who is wearing a pin.
Right.
Right? So I don't know if that answered your question.
It does. Kissy, I'm wondering your thoughts on larger companies participating in Pride, everything from RBC to, so many big companies now participate in Pride, and I'm wondering what your thoughts are on that, Kissy.
I think it's nice. I think it shows that, finally they are seeing and appreciating the community. But I think my take when it comes like rainbow washing. I think I would always say I always think of it like sometimes like myself is even as a content creator. Quite often you see like people creators who are part of the LGBTQ plus community, they tend to get more work around this time of the year, and then after that it's just like it's not as much anymore. But so like I understand they're doing this because this is a Pride is in June, but I think like supporting the community should not be just in June. It should be like all year round, and yeah. But I think it's great. It shows inclusivity. Yeah.
What would you like that to look like all year round? I mean, I totally understand wanting work all year round, but in what other ways could a corporation show up 365 days of the year and not just at the parade? Kissy, do you have ideas on that?
Yeah, like it's very similar to what Gina was saying, like wearing like those pins, even like like maybe like a rainbow lanyard, maybe like trans flag, whatever, bisexual, any flag or something. Then it shows that well, this is a safe space. I support the people. I'm for the community and stuff like that. Yeah, even like having like those stickers outside the stores, businesses and stuff like that. It just shows like this is like a space that's friendly for the queer community.
Mm-hmm. Kelly, what are your thoughts on this? We're kind of like we're a bit all over the place. So the first question is really about the participation of larger companies in Pride, and I'm curious, what thoughts come to mind as you listen to Jean and Kissy?
Well, when Kissy was talking, I was thinking about like the rainbow washing idea, and I think this is sort of in line with what she was saying about that it's a good start. So it's not necessarily a bad thing. It's a good start. And when Jean was talking about signage, that just that visible message that somebody might look at it and think, okay, this is potentially a safe space for me to be, because a lot of people don't know if it's going to be a safe space. As a teacher, it was very clear when people walked into my classroom that it was queer friendly, which sometimes led to some interesting discussions, but it also created a safe space. If somebody felt like they needed someone to talk to, maybe go talk to her. She's got like rainbow stuff around. So those were the two thoughts I had listening to the other two guests speak.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. You all have your own way of it. Oh, go ahead, Jean.
Okay, I just would add that the thing about corporations, I would apply the same way I apply it to allies. Like, sure, it's nice to be out in a parade, especially if it's not raining, right? But I want to know if I go into your bank and say that I have a lesbian partner and I want to set up a legal document in terms of things, are they going to be still as hallelujah, we're in Pride,
Yeah.
Like those are the things that matter. Like the forms, can I put down family of choice as for my next of kin, or do I have to put down a blood relative? Like those are the kinds of details that those companies have to follow through with.
Yeah. Kissy, do you have examples like that? That it's one thing to put the rainbow up, but then do you get a sense of when you are welcome somewhere and when you are not, Kissy?
I think honestly, Gina just said like a very important point. Like even like in hospitals and stuff, when you go having more options, like to put down like different kinds of pronouns, and not just like don't not just like they them. There are other pronouns beyond that for sure, and yeah, like that really kind of like it really resonated with me what Gina was saying. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Kelly, what about you? Are you able to tell when you're welcome somewhere and when you aren't?
Well, we discuss as a group experiences that people have had or report to us. So, for example, there's a local business that we've kind of determined is comfortable with trans people if they pass well, but if somebody's not passing quite as well, they're not treated very well. So that's just something of interest to us, and we look at that and discuss it and wonder. And so we have a bit of a finger on the pulse for which businesses in town authentically are allies and which ones aren't. I guess.
and then word gets around.
Yes.
Yeah. I just find it so interesting because you each have your own way of educating. I don't know if that's the right word, but Kissy, you're creating content, and Kelly, your role with in North Battleford, and Jean too, like your work with seniors. I wonder what you want people to take away from Pride. Like we got a call from Wayne in Beaver Flats who's wondering, what do you hope people take away from an event? So, for example, if a newcomer to our province sees a parade, like what do you want people to know about what's happening? Jean, I'm going to start with you on that.
Is the newcomer straight or queer?
Could be either or, I guess. I don't know. Well, I was thinking.
I guess if they're queer, and I use that term because that it's just so hard to get 2S LGBTQI out and include everyone. But if they're queer, I hope they feel comfortable.
Because they could be coming from a place where it wasn't.
Of course they could. Yeah. Of course they could. And if they're straight, I hope they feel happy. Because people here are comfortable enough to do that.
Great answer. Kissy, what about you? If a newcomer were to see a parade, what would you want people to know about what's going on?
I think I'd like them to know that they feel accepted, welcomed, and inspired, whether they are queer or not, I think that's what the parade is all about, really. Yeah.
And I love that. When you say inspired, what do you mean by that? Tell me more about what you're thinking there.
Well, maybe, for example, if it's an ally, then they should just say, they should getting inspired in a way that, this is what it's all about. It's just a community. There's no harm. Forget about, indoctrinating kids. They're basically just people just, enjoying life and just being who they are. And yeah. And then for a queer person, I think it's just kind of to feel that, to be inspired to just embrace who they are. Because sometimes I think it's a journey being a queer person for some. And people's identities and who they are changes over time. I think it is really for anyone, any person, our identities change. Like, for example, when you get married, you become a mother, you get a job, you become a teacher, nurse. So I think, it's the same thing with the queer identities. Sometimes it does evolve over time. Sometimes you may start as trans and then you realize, oh my God, I'm bisexual or maybe pansexual. Yeah. And Pride can do that for you. Just seeing people who are like that and be like, oh my God, they live so freely inspires me to be who I am, kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Kelly, what do you hope people take away from some of the Pride events? And obviously, it's not just the parade. There's a ton of things going on. But for someone who's maybe they're witnessing it for the first time, what do you hope they take away?
Well, I like Kissy's word, inspired. That's a very good word. The diversities to be celebrated. I'm thinking of, as far as newcomers, there was two women that were a couple that contacted us, the Pride page, just really trying to clarify, is it really legal to get married in Canada? And is there anywhere where it's like celebrated locally if we wanted to have a service there? So that was an interesting discussion. It's like, absolutely. And might want to go to Saskatoon, but not that there's no options here. And I'm remembering a story where we had some event where people were coming up and we'd say, oh, can we put your picture on Facebook that you were here? And one was like, no, because they were visiting from some country that I don't remember which one it was, but wherever they were from, he could be killed for being public about being out. So he was very excited that, wow, here in Canada, you can just say, here's who I am. So we learn a lot when we interact with people who come up to us.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. We have someone who felt inspired to pick up the phone and call. So we have Fran on the line in Saskatoon. Fran, welcome to Blue Sky.
Thank you very much.
What's on your mind as you listen to today's show?
Well, it's interesting hearing the conversation about businesses and rainbowing things up. As a parent of two spirit children or youth, I am really reluctant to go into businesses that do not display a rainbow on their window, and I'm encouraging anybody in business, medical, whatever, because I want to be assured that my children are safe. when we go in anywhere. And that includes not just my kids, but everybody needs to be reassured that it is a safe business to use. And camps, whatever. I need to know that queer youth or gender diverse kids are safe. And our government is not doing that for us. They're doing the opposite.
Fran, thanks for calling today. I really appreciate that.
All right. Bye.
Bye. Great example there of what we can do, because this is kind of how I want to end the show today is giving people some advice. What are some actions people can take to become better allies to the community? And so, Jean, I'm going to start with you.
Oh, me again. I feel like I should have answers to all these questions, and I don't. Allies just have to have guts. I mean, that's basically what it is. Like, I've been in some situations, particularly in work, my former work life, where I didn't feel comfortable talking about being a lesbian or talking about students who had those needs because people were so against it. So people need to come to that point, but they also have to understand that if they want to be an ally, they have to take some responsibility behind it. They can't just put on a T-shirt for the Pride Parade and be done for the year, because they're not really allies. They're just showboating. Mm-hmm. And so that's what I think people need to do. They need to have serious talks with their families and serious talks with their friends about what diversity means and why diversity exists. And I'm so sorry, this week for Arbor Week, there was a lecture out at St. Barbara B. Baker, where they were doing a whole thing on homosexuality in animals, and how many different species actually have homosexuality as part of it. And I missed it. I'm so sorry, because I think that's another thing. It's not just humans.
Yeah.
Right?
Love
okay,
that,
I'm done.
Okay, I love that. And so, Kissy, you've got about 15 seconds. What advice do you have for someone who wants to be a better ally?
Be open-minded and open to learning.
Open. Oh, I love both of those. Open-minded and open to learning. Kelly,
yeah.
What advice would you give?
Support the dismantling of Bill 137 to start, because it's hard. It's vulnerable youth.
We'll end it there. This has been fantastic. Thank you all for your perspectives today, and I wish you all the best throughout the month as you mark Pride. So, Jean, thank you.
You're welcome.
Kissy, thank you.
Thank you. It was lovely to be here.
Yeah, and Kelly, thanks to you too.
My pleasure.
The YouTube so I can see you.
Yeah, we couldn't see each other, but we are going to be on YouTube, so you can check that out by searching for CBC Saskatchewan. You can also be streaming us live on our CBC News app. That's a new feature. It's free. So our guest today, you were hearing from Kelly Waters, the Secretary of Battleford Area Pride. That community is celebrating Pride the week of July 22nd to 28th, so as not to compete with Saskatoon's event. You can follow Kissy Durer on Instagram and TikTok. She will be in Saskatoon for Pride activities later this month. And then Jean Dudley, member of Queer Seniors of Saskatchewan. You can check out the Spark Your Pride event at the Western Development Museum in Saskatoon on June 18th. I'm Leisha Grabinski. You have been listening to Blue Sky.